Hello, welcome to the video, Roles and Responsibilities of Citywide and Community Education Councils. In this video, we'll be discussing the Community Education Council's powers and duties, what they are empowered to do, and what Citywide councils are empowered to do. So the Community Education Councils and Citywide councils are embedded under the New York State Education Law. Title II, Article 52A, is the particular section that covers all things New York City public schools. Under that Article 52A, there are several sections covering a variety of different things that exist within the New York City public school system. The one that we're going to be focusing on today is 2590E, Powers and Duties of Community Education Councils. We'll also be briefly talking about the powers and duties of citywide councils, which actually are covered under the section on the City Board of Education, also known as the Panel for Educational Policy. We are not quite sure why the citywide councils are put under that section and not their own sections, but that's how the law is written. So what is actually in the law? I'm going to be briefly summarizing what is in the law, particularly 2590E, the powers and duties of the CECs. So the first paragraph you will see in the law talks about the real purpose of community education councils, and that is to establish educational policies and objectives. Those are the words that are used in the law. Community education councils are also supposed to promote achievement of education standards. And then the law takes somewhat of a detour to talk about corruption prevention type measures in the law. One of them is the community education councils are supposed to cooperate in removal of any council member. It's such an odd thing to put in there so early on in the section of the law that talks about the powers and duties. But I suppose when the legislators wrote the law back in 2002, they were concerned about corruption. And the following section after that is about submitting employment and financial disclosure. It's all about conflict of interest. Submitting employment and financial disclosure is actually two separate sections under 25E, and together they cover 9 long paragraphs. While some of the other sections in 2590E only have a short paragraph or just one long paragraph. So it's interesting to see how much energy the legislators put into these anti-corruption type clauses under the law. Then it actually talks about training requirements for community education council members. All members are supposed to undergo some kind of training no later than 3 months from taking office. Most elected CEC members start their office on July 1st of odd years. Within 3 months of that date, you're supposed to have your first training. That is mandated under the state law. For those of you who are appointed by the borough president or public advocate, you still have to do this in the first 3 months of your appointment date. There's also a requirement that every single member on the Community Education Council is supposed to undergo a training session once a year. It's continuing education annually. That's what the law says. The law also says failure to comply with the law, this section of the law and the training requirement, may result in removal from the CECs. Although I don't know of any member who has been removed for failure to meet the training requirements. In fact, I don't think the DOE keeps track of which members has done the training and which members needs to still do training. But the law is pretty clear that you're supposed to do that. Then it goes on to say the powers and duties of CECs include preparing a school district report card. I'm not sure how many CECs actually do this. And they have the power to employ or retain counsel. That means the lawyer from the city of New York. If the council ever needs some legal counsel, then the council can actually ask the city of New York to provide a lawyer. This doesn't necessarily mean that individual CEC members can rely on the city to provide a lawyer for any legal counsel, but the CECs as a council can use the city's lawyers. Then there's a very strange section in the law talking about student transportation. Specifically, it says that the CECs are responsible for ensuring return transportation to students on field trips and extracurricular activities. It's probably a leftover from the school board days. I don't think any CECs are actually responsible for providing pupil transportation. There is a central DOE office, the Division of Pupil Transportation, that takes care of student transportation, although there are a lot of issues associated with it. The CECs, I have never known any CECs having to be responsible for pupil transportation for field trips and extracurricular activities for students, but it's still in the law. Now, this is the one true legal authority of many community education councils, and this is to approve school attendance zoning lines. This is one power that the state legislatures and the mayor back at the Bloomberg era, it was Michael Bloomberg who asked for mayoral control. They were happy to leave this authority with the community education councils because school zoning is highly contentious. These are the zoning hearing meetings that CECs hold where hundreds of parents come out, and it can get really contentious and ugly and difficult. So they didn't want to make the decisions on this particular issue. So CECs are still responsible for approving school zoning lines. And if the CECs don't approve zoning proposals, then the zoning lines cannot be changed. This is all true except for District 1, 7, and 23, which have no zoned schools. So in these districts, CECs do not have to do any zoning, but they also don't have that one legal authority. Continuing on, CECs are supposed to hold monthly meetings with a superintendent. So if your superintendent is not participating in meetings with the council, you should probably show this section of the law to your superintendent. You're supposed to hold monthly meetings with the public comment opportunities. This is your calendar meetings where the public has an opportunity to comment on any pertinent issues that they like to speak on. CECs are also supposed to review the district's educational programs. This is often done through the district planning process. Usually in September or early October, the Office of District Planning will present to each CEC their data deck that shows enrollment, types of programs, and schools in your district, and the general analysis of what the school landscape looks like in your district. And that's where you would have a conversation about the educational programs that are available to students in your district. You can also discuss gaps in programs, whether it's a NEST program for students in autism spectrum disorder or Horizon programs or some other programs that your district has a need for, you can be discussing with the DOE. So reviewing the district's educational programs is an important function that is starting to happen with the districts, with the DOE's Office of District Planning. And you should make sure that this process is actually happening for your CEC. You're also supposed to submit an annual evaluation of the superintendent. Most community education council members are aware of this, but it is worth remembering that this needs to be done every year in June usually. But you're also supposed to evaluate other supervisory staff overseeing schools. So this means deputy superintendent in your district are supposed to be evaluated by the CECs. To my knowledge, I don't think any CEC has done this, but the law actually does say CECs are supposed to evaluate supervisory staff, not just the community superintendent. CECs also review capital plan submitted by the School Construction Authority and hold a public hearing regarding the capital plan. This is a process that kicks off in November every year. The School Construction Authority will reach out to CECs to present the capital plan, whether it's the new 5-year plan or the amendment to the existing plan. And the CECs are supposed to solicit feedback from the community. CECs are supposed to also provide input to the chancellor and the city board. This is usually done in the form of resolutions. If there is an issue that is important to your school community, to your district community, you can write up a resolution, you can discuss the resolution in the council, and you can take a vote. And if the resolution passes, then you submit that to the chancellor and the city board. That's the PEP. CEC members are supposed to liaise with school leadership teams. This is an important function as well. This is how your community education council stays in touch with your school communities, and you can understand what the needs are in your school district, school district and school communities. You're also supposed to have a representative on the district leadership team. This is a new provision in the law that passed back in 2021 because of parent advocacy. It used to be that district leadership team did not have to have a representative from community education councils, but now officially community education councils must have a representative on the district leadership team. The law does not say it has to be the president, so it's up to each community education council to decide who represents the council on the district leadership team. Community education councils are also supposed to interview a minimum of 3 candidates for superintendent. If there is a vacancy in your district for superintendent, then the central DOE is supposed to provide or present 3 candidates for your council to review and rank. It doesn't mean your top choice is going to be appointed by the chancellor, because in the end, the chancellor has the authority to appoint. But there is at least a process for the CEC to provide feedback on the candidates, 3 top candidates. CECs are also supposed to hold a public hearing on school utilization changes. These are proposals, sorry about that. These are proposals that the central DOE submits to community education councils. It could be co-locations of different schools. It could be a grade truncation. It could be a grade expansion of a school. It could be a school phase out. Anything that will change how a school building will be utilized will have to go through this process. And the part of the process is for the CEC to hold a public hearing with the school leadership teams of the affected schools, solicit feedback, and if the CEC decides to weigh in on that particular proposal, then the CEC can pass a resolution either in support of the proposal or in opposition to. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Board of Education or the PEP will approve or go along with what the CEC recommends. The CEC may submit a resolution opposing the proposal, but the PEP may still vote to approve it. But at least there is a process for the public to weigh in and the CEC to submit a formal resolution. CECs are also supposed to be consulted on hiring of parent coordinators. This is a new provision in the law that was added in 2021. Interestingly, this did not get added to the Section 2590E of the state law pertaining to the powers and duties of the community education councils. This got stuck into Section 2590H, which covers the powers and duties of the chancellor. So if you're ever looking for this particular provision in the law, make sure to look under 2590H and not 2590E. So what about the citywide education councils? Again, the citywide councils are put under the City Board of Education section of the law, which is 2590B. I'm not quite sure why they got put under there, but that's where they are. So there are 4 citywide councils, one for special education, one for English language learners, one for high schools, and one for District 75. And these have their own little paragraphs under the 2590B. 2590.B.4 is Citywide Council on Special Education, B.5 for English language learners, B.6 for high schools, and B.7 for District 75, which actually is a new addition to the state law. Until 2021, District 75 CEC only existed as a chancellor's regulation entity. It was not in the state law, but because of advocacy by parent leaders, they were finally put into the state law. So what do they actually say? Citywide Councils on Special Education Powers and Duties, there are only 4 paragraphs compared to 20 plus paragraphs under Community Education Councils. It's kind of strange that it's so short. And it says that Citywide Council on Special Education is supposed to advise and comment on any educational or instructional policy involving the provision of services for students with disabilities. They're also supposed to advise and comment on the process of establishing committees and/or subcommittees on special education in community school districts. CCSE is also supposed to issue an annual report and hold at least 1 meeting per month open to the public. That's it, 4 relatively short paragraphs. Citywide Council on English Language Learners, very similar, but there are only 3 paragraphs. Advise and comment, issue an annual report, and hold at least 1 meeting per month. Very similar for Citywide Council on High Schools, advise and comment, issue an annual report, hold at least 1 meeting per month open to the public. And Citywide Council on District 75, very similar, advise and comment, issue an annual report, hold at least 1 meeting per month. So it begs the question if some of the other sections that are covered under 25(9)E, the Community Education Council powers and duties, should also apply to citywide councils. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't tell you, but citywide council members do have to submit financial and employment disclosures, as far as I know. So some of the other elements from Community Education Council section of the law do seem to apply to citywide councils. But if you look at the state law themselves, these are really the only things under the sections for each citywide councils. So just quickly, I want to show you where to find the law, because it's always useful to read the actual language of the law rather than just my quick summary. So New York State education law can be found online. New York State Senate website has a really good web page. If you go to the New York State Senate homepage, you have a little button that says Bills and Laws. You click on that and you can actually find the laws of all the New York State laws actually under that web page. The website is www.nysenate.gov. And from there, you click on Bills and Laws, and then you will find the education law under the laws section of the page. You can also find New York State education, You can also find New York State education law at a website called findlaw.com. That is codes.findlaw.com/ny, codes.findlaw.com/y. This is a website that actually has laws of all the states. So if you just go to codes.findlaw.com, it'll take you to their homepage where you can select a state. But for our purposes, you want to go to New York State laws, and then from there, you click on the education law. Finally, I just want to share what the ECC is very quickly. We are a grassroots organization of parents, caregivers, educators, and advocates. Our mission is to develop and support New York City public school parent leadership through education, networking, and organizing. We are here to empower historically marginalized New York City public non-charter school parents to become advocates and change agents at the systems level. That is really what we do, how we would like to work. And we are a nonprofit 501c3 that we would really love to have your donation if you're willing to help us out. Be sure to watch part 2 of this presentation. I just quickly covered what the law says, but there are a couple other things that I want to share with you about what the CECs can do and should do. So stay tuned for the part 2 of this video. And here's a QR code for those of you who would like to donate to the CECC. Thank you so much for watching.